I received a question from an athlete about how they can manage anxiety in the moment during games. Right? It's one thing to work on reducing your anxiety going into a game, but what happens when you are experiencing this anxiety in the heat of the moment in the middle of competition? Well, there is a 3-step process that I use with the athletes I work with in one-on-one coaching, and it's called the ABCs of anxiety. This is also something I used before games as well because I think it can help with both, but it's really powerful in the moment. Now, if you are interested in learning more about one-on-one mental performance coaching, then go ahead and click the link that I put in the description below. Now, before I get into the strategy about how to use the ABCs, what I want to discuss first is this idea of where anxiety comes from in the first place. And this is very important when we're working on reducing and managing anxiety in the moment. Because if we don't understand where the anxiety is coming from, it's tougher for us to manage it when it's happening. So anxiety in sports can really be characterized by outcome-oriented thinking or worrying too much about the future. When you're worrying too much about the future, what happens is you're focused on what might happen. And more often than not, it's probably what you don't want to have happen during that game. Now, when we know that you're focused on what you don't want to have happen, what do we really need to work on? Well, we need to work on bringing all of that attention back into the present moment. And an analogy I like to use is imagining that you're fishing, right? And you have that lure cast all the way out into the water. That's you worrying about the future, right? So your attention is way out there in the water. What we need to work on is reeling that attention back in. So let's reel that lure back to us because we need our attention to be in the present moment. So I want you to get that picture in your head right now, right? Whenever you're anxious, you're thinking too much about the future and what might happen. You're worried about what might happen. Now, these worries can come in many different kind of forms. It might be that you're worried about messing up. It might be that you're worried about what your teammates will think of you, your parents will think of you. You might even be thinking, how great it would be if I succeed in this moment. But we know that in the moment, that anxiety is driven by your worries about the future or your thoughts about the future. What we want to do is reel that attention back in. And that's what these ABCs help with. So the A stands for accept. We really want to work on accepting the anxiety in the moment. Now, back when I was playing baseball, I had a really bad habit of fighting my anxiety whenever I felt it. The reason that I fought my anxiety so much is because I knew how poorly I played whenever I was anxious. If I was walking up to bat, or better yet, if I was in the on-deck circle getting ready to go up to bat and I felt super anxious, I would think to myself, okay, I got to get rid of this anxiety. I can't be anxious. I never hit well when I'm anxious. But those types of thoughts only perpetuate the anxiety. So what we want to do first is accept the anxiety. We have to start letting go of the resistance. This doesn't mean you want to be anxious, but it means you don't fight the anxiety. Because the last thing you want to do in that moment is give more attention to your anxious thoughts. So you accept the anxiety by simply talking to yourself. A great example of this is from a dancer that I've been working with recently. And when she's out there dancing and she starts to feel anxious, she starts just telling herself, it's okay. I accept I'm anxious. I can dance well even though I'm anxious. So for yourself, in the moment during the game, when you notice that you're feeling anxious, talk to yourself first. All right, it's okay. It's fine that I'm feeling anxious. I accept that. What we're doing here is we are working to take the attention off of the anxiety so then we can refocus that attention onto something else. The second part, so the B stands for breathe. In the moment, you need to make sure that you are taking some nice deep breaths, if you can, to work on calming yourself down. Whenever you are experiencing anxiety, you know how you have that real shallow breathing, really racing heart? Well, we need to work on calming that down, so reducing those physical symptoms of the anxiety. And the best way to reduce physical symptoms of anxiety is to breathe, right? Take some nice deep breaths. A great way to do this is through the use of some count breathing, where let's say you breathe in for a count of 4, and then you breathe out for a count of 4. This forces you to take nice rhythmic breaths, but it also begins to take your attention once more off of the anxiety, and we are starting to put that attention more into the present moment because you're focusing on that counting and you're focusing on the breathing. Now, the C stands for change your thinking. Right? Everything I said earlier about what causes anxiety in the moment is that you're worried about how you'll perform, what will happen. So we need at that moment to start changing your thinking. What will change your thinking to is something that you can control. A great exercise that I like to do is to have athletes list out everything they can control about their game and then pick out, okay, what will be the most important thing for me to focus on in the moment whenever I'm anxious? Once you decide what that most important thing is, that's what you need to focus on in the moment. So you've accepted the anxiety, you've done your breathing. The third part is let's change your thinking. Take that attention off of that outcome, right? So we're reeling that lure in, and let's put it onto the process, into the present moment, onto something that you can control. So that right there is a fantastic strategy that you can use to manage anxiety in the moment during games. Now, in addition to managing your anxiety in the moment, you also want to work on building your confidence overall as an athlete. So what I've done right here is I've linked another video that goes into detail on some different mental training tools and exercises that you can use to build your confidence as an athlete. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.